Hi guys and welcome back to a new video. In today's video, I will be talking about patch 9.2.7 that will be released on Wednesday and about all the new changes that are coming with this new patch for the auction house. So if you haven't followed, Blizzard announced that basically now all the different commodities, which are for instance crafted materials, crafted consumables, gems, herbs and materials in general, all these different items will now be region wide. So it means that if you want to buy something, you will be able to buy it from any seller from all across your region. So as you can imagine, there are a lot of different consequences from implementing this change in the game. Some activities and some professions will definitely unfortunately have a negative impact from these different changes, and other activities might become even better because of these different changes. So the goal of today's video is for me to share my thoughts on what I think are going to be the different impacts, what you should do in order to maybe adjust a little bit your goal making activities. And then I will also try to explain how you can start preparing for these different changes and what you can do in the next 2 days in order to maybe make a little bit of gold when this new patch will be released on Wednesday. So let's start with what is going to be, I think, very obvious for many people. And this is gathering professions. So as you can imagine, for many people, gathering is going to be impacted very negatively. As you know, many people on low pop and medium pop realms especially can really control different markets by setting up their own prices and by being the main seller and vendor on these different realms. But now it's going to be way more difficult because all these different smaller and medium pop realms will be merged with high population realms. So it means that for many different markets, it's going to be overflooded and probably the prices are going to crash a lot. So I think there is like some negative, of course, because of like the prices are going to crash on many realms. And so it's going to be a little bit more difficult. Also, there's going to have more competition, so people will have to undercut way more in order to actually make some sales. Then when it comes to the positive, of course, you will also be able to sell more items. Even if there is more competition, it also means that you have more opportunities to sell a lot of items, even if it's at a cheaper price. It will also mean that you will, if you're playing on a hyper realm, have also more like customers, and sometimes you will be able maybe to set up prices a little bit more higher because you have just like also more people buying and buying all the different stocks. So it might just go a little bit faster to like empty the stocks and try to reset a little bit the prices. And also what can be interesting for some people, and it's going to be simply trying to reset the prices regionally. So it's going to probably require a lot of gold, and it's probably something you will only be able to do on materials, crafted consumables, and commodities from previous expansions. But basically, if you're successfully, if you're successful at resetting an entire market, then you can really sell everything for every realms in the region. So that could also actually be very, very interesting as well. But overall, when it comes to gathering, I would say it's probably going to be one of the different like professions and type of gold making activities are going to be the worst impacted in terms of really the negative consequences for this economy. After that, we're going to have crafting like professions. So crafting professions, especially when it comes to the different armor pieces and transmogs and mounts, is going to be a clear winner here. So as Blizzard mentioned, all the different like armors, weapons, and normally also mounts, pets, and everything won't be affected by this change, and they will remain server specific. So it means that now, if you're playing on a low pop or medium pop realm, you will be able to get a lot of very, very cheap like materials, and then you will still be able to craft some very interesting items and to sell them for a very, very high price. So for instance, if I go right now on my realm, as you can see, for some of these items, such as the Sky Golem or the VL of the Sands or all these other mounts that you can craft, you can see that you will be able to sell them still for a very high price. But with the change that will happen on Wednesday, you will be able to buy all the different materials for a ridiculous amount of gold. So one thing I would definitely recommend people who are especially playing on low pop and medium pop realms is to try to unlock all these different recipes, whether it is like mounts or maybe also transmog items. You have like a lot of different transmog items that have really good sell rates and that you can make a lot of gold with. And again, these transmog items will also become way easier to craft. And of course, you also have like a lot of other type of items, but overall, all these different items that you can craft and that will remain like server specific will become very, very interesting because you will be able to craft them for a very cheap price. When it comes to the legendaries, so the legendaries are going to be extremely interesting as well because on many realms, as you can see, for instance, on mine, you are still able to sell them for quite a lot of gold. And now, especially that we're going to get this change, it's going to be extremely, extremely cheap to craft these different legendaries. For some of them, I'm talking about really less than like 5k in order to craft one legendary, 291. And so, as you can imagine, you're going to be able to make a lot of gold. So, as you can see, for instance, I'm still selling a lot of these legendaries for a lot of gold. And so with this change, I know that I'm going to be able to really craft a lot of them and make a lot of sales. Again, on high pop realms, it's probably going to be still like the same. Unfortunately, it's not really going to change a lot. It's more going to change for medium pop and especially low pop realms where sometimes the materials could still be a little bit expensive. So definitely something you want to still consider if you haven't started to craft legendaries and everything. It's still something that you can make some gold with. And again, I've explained in many of my previous videos. You can go check one where I highlight whether it is still profitable or not to craft legendaries in patch 9.2.7 or not. But really, for me, still something that I think you will be able to make some gold. And this is an activity that will be positively impacted by this change. After that, of course, we have all the different cross-server or cross-realm flipping. So I've explained that in many of my previous videos. Basically, a lot of people, what they do is that they go on a high pop realm, they buy a lot of like cheap material, and then they character transfer this character on another low pop realm where they sell everything for a very, very cheap price. So this is something that until now was extremely profitable and many people, including myself, were making a lot of gold with. But as you can imagine, now it's going to become very, very difficult to do these type of things. As I mentioned, of course, you will still have, for instance, like mounts and things like that you can like purchase for very cheap price, maybe on a high pop realm and try to sell back on the low pop realm. But as now even the crafters on the different low pop realms will be able to benefit from the very cheap materials, I think the competition is still going to be very important. And so even if you try to do this type of character transfer and like this type of like gold making activities, it's a little bit more risky because as you can imagine, if you were doing it before when the materials were very expensive on low pop realms, people would not consider undercutting you and maybe like putting the mount for like 50k instead of 150. But now that they can anyway still recraft a mount using very cheap materials after that, they will undercut a lot. So these different activities, I would say, are going to be impacted very negatively. For most of them, I don't think it's going to work very well anymore. But again, I'm sure you can still like find some good ways of making all of that. You still have different categories of items that will remain server specific, and so you will still be able to like try to flip these different items across realms. But it's just going to be a little bit more tricky. As I mentioned just before, another thing that might become very interesting is actually resetting or flipping an entire category of items across the entire region. So let's say on Wednesday, you see that some of the like materials from Shadowlands are very, very cheap on the entire region. What you can do is simply go there, buy the entire stock from the entire region, reset it, and maybe like that you will be able to make some gold. It will be extremely risky, especially if you're trying to do that, for instance, with materials such as materials from Shadowlands, because there are just so many and you will have to spend a lot of gold, and then also people will just come back very, very easily and start undercutting you and breaking the market again very easily. But you can also do that with some of the previous expansions materials, such as, for instance, here the Magnificent Hide or all these other materials that are still relevant and that you will maybe be able to have the control over for maybe one day. Even if it's just one day, keep in mind that now you will be able to sell all these items for people from all around the region. So I think it might really become something interesting. I will definitely try to do that on certain, like ore, for instance, or like herbs or things that are still interesting. But keep in mind that it might become very, very risky. So something you want to do with like some items that are not too expensive to like purchase fully, and then you will be able to see. But definitely something interesting to explore with this new change. So overall, I would say I'm very interested to see how exactly it's going to work. As you might imagine, on Wednesday, all the different auction house will be completely emptied. So it means that some categories of items or materials, for instance, can also see pretty like a pretty huge increase of price. I'm thinking about, for instance, materials from Shadowlands. Maybe all the different sellers will just agree for at least 1 or 2 days to sell everything for a higher price. So what I would recommend you to do is, especially if you're right now playing on Hyperrealm, maybe try to wait before selling all your different materials and everything until Wednesday, and try to sell everything Wednesday as soon as the patch is released, as soon as you can log in. And especially try to wait and see, and don't undercut directly, because maybe some of these categories of items can just get a nice reset in terms of the value and the overall price region-wide. When it comes to what I'm personally doing right now in order to make some extra gold when it will launch, so basically what I'm trying to do is find some materials that are extremely cheap on my realm and that I know I will be able to sell for a big increase on Wednesday. So for instance, if you take here the Storm Silver Ore, as you can see, you can really buy them for a very cheap price on my realm, but normally on average it's 22 gold. So I know that buying all these different items, I will be able to sell them for a way better price. And you can do that really with a lot of these different items. I've really tried to find a lot of different categories of items. For instance, here, as you can see, these ones for 5 gold, when normally they sell on average for 30 gold. So in order for you to do that, what I would recommend you to do, of course, is to get TSM, Trade Skill Master. This is an add-on that will give you the information regarding the regional average daily sold, the sell rate, and also the market value and the regional market value. What you want to do is to find some items that have a very good sell rate and also that are very cheap compared to the regional prices. Again, it's always a little bit risky to do that because you never know how it can impact the prices, and also keep in mind that on average, probably like all the value on hyperrealms are going to become the new normal because these are going to be the main markets. And so even if, for instance, right now, some of these items might be a little bit cheaper compared to the regional market value avenue, if you go on, for instance, the Undermine Journal and you try to look at the prices there, you might find some like different information. Let's say, for instance, if I take right now the heavy Callus Heights, as you can see, on my realm, it's at 9 gold, and normally on average, it's 10 gold. And now I'm on the Undermine Journal, and as you can see, I'm seeing kind of the same information, 9 gold on average. But then if you go down and you look at the value on all the different realms, you can see that where there is the most quantity, all the different items are being sold for less than 2 gold. So it means that 100% these different items will remain around like 2 or 3 gold maximum after the release of the new patch on Wednesday. And so for that reason, I'm not going to invest in these different items, even if for instance on your realm it's right now 4 gold, and right now it shows that the regional market value market price is 9 gold for the European region. It's still not worth it. So if you want to try this technique, just do that, but also use the Undermine Journal and just come and check what is the value on hyperrealms, because you will like that be able to see if this is something that is risky or not. So for instance, as I mentioned, I bought a lot of the Osmanite ore on my realm for 5 gold. Here again, it says 26 gold. And if you go down, you can see that for this one, actually, yes, on most realms, even the hyper realms, the value is going to be at more than 20 gold. So here, for instance, I know I will be able to make a lot of gold on Wednesday by reselling all these different materials for a better price. So that's another technique you can do. Maybe it will help you make a couple of more gold on Wednesday, but again, keep in mind it's always risky to flip items, and so I cannot guarantee you will be able to actually make some profit. But that's going to be pretty much it for today's video. I'm very excited about Wednesday and to see how exactly it's going to impact all the different economies and how overall people are going to react to this new change. I will be back very soon with more guides and more videos. And in the meantime, I wish you all a great start of the week and I will see you all very soon. Bye.